this week's episode, we will be recapping Week 8 of the NFL season. Then we're going to get into some trade deadline stuff. Today is Tuesday. Trade deadline is at 4 o'clock. It's right around 3:30 right now, so hopefully I've caught most of the trade deadline big news. If not, maybe I'll make some content on it a little bit later after the fact. And then we're also going to get into the Thursday Night Football preview. So let's go ahead and jump right into what was Thursday Night Football this past week in Week 8. That was the Bills versus the Buccaneers. It was a very interesting game. The Bills got back on track. They've been a little bit, down in the dumps. They've been a little bit on the decline in people's opinions and minds as of late, just because of some of the play that they put on the field as of late. And they got back on track here. It was not exactly pretty by them. It looked like the Buccaneers had a chance at the very end of the game to win the football game. They score late, and then they have a chance at a Hail Mary, which if Chris Godwin just turned around, he would have had a real chance to get a touchdown there to tie the game. So I think the Buffalo Bills definitely still have things to work on, but it looks like things are starting to go back in the right direction here. It looks like the passing game for them was not as reliant on Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs to just make plays for them. They actually got a few other people involved in the offense there. Obviously, you have Dawson Knox going on IR, so Dalton Kincaid was much more involved in the offense, which I think is a good thing. He's a very talented tight end, drafted this year as a rookie. And then they also got Khalil Shakir involved in the offense as well, who, I think he's a third-year player now, if I'm not mistaken, and he had some talent coming out of the draft, but they just haven't really used him a whole lot. And so I guess because of the fact that they couldn't use the 12 personnel as much because Dawson Knox is on IR, they use a little bit more 11 personnel. Put Khalil Shakir in there as the third guy in the rotation there with Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. And it looks like Josh Allen enjoyed getting the ball out to him. He made some plays. He made some great catches. And he seemed to be getting open. So I think them opening up that portion of the field, kind of the mid-range area of the field, is going to be good for their offense because their run game is still a little bit lackluster. I don't think they really want to run the ball as much as they probably should. They did sign, or it looks like they're signing Leonard Fournette, which is going to be interesting how they ended up using him, probably around the goal line, just like they were planning on using Latavius Murray a little bit, but he's been a little bit lackluster as of the last few weeks as well. So James Cook is still going to be the guy, kind of between the 20s there. But I think in the short yardage situations, Leonard Fournette's probably going to get a few more snaps. Latavius Murray's probably going to still be sprinkled in there as well. But yeah, Bills get back on track. Let's move on to the next game. I normally probably wouldn't even say anything about this game just because two teams that I don't know if they're going to be super competitive going forward. But, obviously the Texans still have a chance in the AFC South, so I probably should talk about them. Anyways, Panthers versus Texans, a game, obviously, highly anticipated for some people if you're, into the whole draft process and stuff of that nature. Obviously, it's the 1 and 2 pick overall in the NFL draft this past season. Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud. Obviously, CJ Stroud has been playing much better. His team seems to be a little bit better than the Panthers right now. But the Panthers get the job done on Sunday, get their first win of the season, a huge one, get to kind of monkey off their back a little bit, if you will. Bryce Young has a pretty efficient and pretty good game here. I mean, they didn't score a ton of points. The Panthers defense is still a pain in the butt for a lot of people. Obviously, CJ Stroud, understands and got the brunt of that on Sunday. But man, Bryce Young is beginning to look much more functional. The offense in Carolina there is looking more functional than it has all season. They did change the play calling to Thomas Brown, their offensive coordinator, instead of having Frank Reich do it. So I don't know if it was necessarily a product of that or not, but it could be. And it looks like maybe if this is the case, Thomas Brown is going to be the guy moving forward as the play caller, and Bryce Young might enjoy that moving forward as well because the offense, like I said, looked much cleaner. People were a lot more open in this game than in the past. I know the Texans defense isn't the best in the world, but they've been pretty competitive this season. So Panthers get a huge win on Sunday. Obviously, they're not going to go 0-16 now, so a lot of people can stress less, I guess, if you're a Carolina Panthers fan in this one. And obviously, you don't own your first-round draft pick next year, so you don't really care about, continuing to lose, kind of tanking. So it is what it is. You're going to try to get as many wins under your belt as possible at this point, just to, get momentum going in the right direction for next season whenever they get a little bit more weapons, maybe a little bit more help on the offensive line, things of that nature. Next game, Cowboys versus Rams. This one was wild. Obviously, the Cowboys score 43 in this one to the Rams 20. Basically, this game, just nothing went right for the Rams in this game. Obviously, the Cowboys get the ball first, go straight down the field, score a touchdown, a great throw from Dak Prescott to Jake Ferguson, their tight end. And then the Rams marched down the field, really. They had a nice offensive possession, and it just stalled out in the, right around the 10-yard line, I should say. And they settled for a field goal, and then basically from then on, it was just an onslaught by the Dallas Cowboys in general, from Dallas going down, kicking a 58-yard field goal, and then from there it was a pick six by Deron Bland, and then it was a blocked punt for a safety, and then it was a great return after that blocked punt because they punted the ball off because it was a safety by Kevontae Turpin. He brought it back all the way to right around the 10-yard line, and they scored again. So it was 26-3 incredibly quickly after the start of the game there. And basically, whenever you're down by that much that early in the game to the Dallas Cowboys, they're just going to pin their ears back and get after the quarterback, and that's exactly what happened in this game. As soon as they got that big lead, it was unleash the Kraken. Essentially, it was Micah Parsons coming off the edge, crazy Sam Williams coming off the edge, DeMarcus Lawrence, Osia Odigizua. I mean, they got some good players up there. Whenever they have a lead and they know that you have to pass the ball, they are a very dangerous defense. And clearly, Deron Bland has been doing a great job filling in for Trevon Diggs after he got injured with the ACL. And obviously, you have Stephon Diggs, a pretty solid rock on the other side of the field there from him. So Cowboys look good again. They are a little bit Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde this season. I mean, it's a lot of games where they've looked out of it, and then some games where they're just blowing people out. So it's a very interesting look for them this season. I don't know what to expect, week in and week out from these guys. And obviously this week's going to be huge. Dallas week for the Eagles. Eagles and Cowboys, always a great rivalry, always a great game. This is going to be one of the few times that we've actually going to be able to see Dak versus Jalen Hurts. It almost never lines up for some reason or another. So big game this upcoming Sunday in Philadelphia. It's going to be very cool to watch. Next game, Saints versus Colts. Basically, the reason I'm getting after this game is the Saints look like they're back on track a little bit here on offense. Their offense obviously looked terrible last week in a game where it looked like Derek Carr and his receiving core were just so disjointed and dysfunctional that they couldn't get anything going until the very late in the game. And so in this one, they get things going again. Alvin Kamara, a very welcome sight for Derek Carr. Once again, he's a guy that if stuff starts hitting the fan, he gets the ball out quick to Alvin Kamara in the flat or right there in the middle of the field, and he can just turn around and get a few yards, and it keeps them ahead of the chains. They're not always going to be behind the chains, and so I think this is a good step in the right direction for the Saints. The Colts, I think, because of the whole Gardner Minshew thing, he's starting now. The honeymoon's over for that, I believe. I think this is a situation where everybody's going to expect, a Gardner Minshew back there. He's still going to probably be able to light up a lot of defenses because Shane Steichen is play calling, play designing his rear off at this point, and Gardner Minshew can just operate in a good offense. But I don't think they're going to win a whole lot of games moving forward just with the fact that he's the quarterback. He's just a little bit limited in certain situations. But yeah, Saints get on track once again. They are definitely firmly in the mix in the NFC South there because the Falcons falter once again. But good days could be coming ahead for both the Saints and the Falcons. It'll be interesting coming down to the wire for the NFC South there. Next game, we have the Dolphins versus the Patriots. Not a whole lot to say here. Patriots still not a very good team right now. Dolphins get back on track after losing to the Philadelphia Eagles in a big game on Sunday Night Football. And they just beat, a bad team. They just beat another, inferior opponent, essentially. And this is just what the Dolphins have ended up doing all season. Tyreek Hill has another good game. Jalen Waddle really gets in on the action and the fun on this game as well. So offense back on track, basically, for the Dolphins. Dolphins defense is going to be much more improved going forward with Jalen Ramsey now healthy. Xavier Howard coming back as well. They are going to be, on defense, they were a little bit struggling earlier on in the season because both their, bookends in the secondary there were out. So as they get healthier and as they have more time and chemistry to work through throughout the season, that defense is going to get better. The offense is already very good. They're going to be hard to stop moving forward in the AFC. Next game, we have Falcons versus Titans. This will be another game where I probably usually would just skip over. I mean, right now Falcons and Titans are just kind of two boring franchises right this second. But what I will say is obviously everybody knows Will Levis went for 4 touchdowns this Sunday against this Falcons team. A Falcons defense which is top 10 right now in the NFL and just in overall defense. Been a very good unit all season, and Will Levis just came out and they didn't put the kid gloves on him. They let him go out there and sling it, and dude, he has some very effortless arm strength. Obviously, I mean, that was part of the whole deal with him coming out of the draft. Like, he had ridiculous arm strength. Some people just didn't know if he was going to be ready for the NFL right off the rip, and maybe the Titans and pretty much everybody else in the draft that didn't pick him in the first round were completely wrong. I mean, this is one game, so let's not get too carried away, but he looked very, very good. He had some touchdown throws in this game that it was just a flick of the wrist and the ball was floating. I mean, he throws a high, deep ball, which is really nice. It gives the wide receivers time to run under the ball and go, catch the ball, essentially. It just gives them time to, maneuver and manipulate a defender if, they're in the vicinity. So, Will Levis looked very good in this game, obviously. But one of the more interesting things about this game was the fact that in the second half, it looks like Desmond Ridder was being evaluated for a concussion, and he was cleared to come back and just didn't come back for the second half. They started Taylor Heineke in the second half. And man, when I tell you the difference between the first half and the second half of this game when it comes to the way the offense looked and functionally ran, there was no comparison. I don't see a situation where Arthur Smith can really actually justify going back to Desmond Ridder at this point, because Taylor Heineke operated the offense 10 times better. It was smooth. It was getting the ball out of his hands quickly. He was processing quicker than Desmond Ridder ever has. And he was hitting people in stride with accurate balls, and just you could tell how much more pressure Taylor Heineke was putting on the defense of the Titans when he came in the game. I mean, they actually had to respect the passing game, and they couldn't just stack the box against a Bijan Robinson or a Tyler Algier, even a Cordell Patterson. So going forward, I think this is a big situation for the Falcons. I think if they start Heineke for the rest of the season, they will really be able to compete in the NFC South and potentially get the division win. Because I think they can. With everything being said, I think them and the Saints, obviously the two top teams in the NFC South, but I think the Falcons have the defense and the offensive weapons. If Taylor Heineke can just get the ball out of his hands and facilitate the ball to his playmakers, I think they can be a pain in the rear for a lot of people in the NFC playoffs if they can win the division or get a wild card in the very least. So yeah, Taylor Heineke looked good. Just for fantasy managers out there, that this may be something to look into. If you're, trying to make some moves at the trade deadline in fantasy, maybe start looking at the fact that some people might be out of the playoff picture that have a Drake London, that have a Bijan Robinson, maybe even look at Kyle Pitts maybe. I mean, I don't know. Moving forward, Taylor Heineke and that offense could really make some noise. And so maybe start looking around for some sellers at the trade deadline in fantasy football as well. Let's go on to the next one, Eagles versus Commanders. This game was pretty wild. Basically, the Eagles were able to do pretty much anything they wanted on offense. The offense was clicking on all cylinders. The rushing attack was not as good as you would expect against the Commanders team. But Jalen Hurts had one of his best days in the history of his career, basically. He threw for over 300 yards, had 4 touchdowns on the day, and was just carving people up with his arm, which is incredible right now considering the fact that he's dealing with a knee injury. Looks like a bone bruise, which is being reported by Jay Glazer. So it's not like the worst injury in the world for him, for like a knee injury wise. But it's clearly affecting him. He's limping out there when he ever has to run and stuff of that nature, which has been less and less the last few weeks, which in my opinion, and I've made a video about it, on my TikTok and YouTube, that I really think moving forward, that his knee injury could be one of the better things that have ever happened for the Eagles offense. Based on the fact that earlier on in the season, Brian Johnson, the new offensive coordinator for the Eagles, was relying on and using Jalen Hurts' running ability and his legs as kind of a crutch to get out of certain situations in football games. As soon as he got to the red zone, it was a whole lot of QB draws, QB power, RPOs at the wrong time. He was just forcing the issue with Jalen Hurts' legs early in the season, and we were stalling out in the red zone because of it. It was a whole lot of running the ball because I think he wanted to mitigate the situation where Jalen Hurts could drop back and throw an interception, or somebody could fumble into the red zone and just we wouldn't get points. So I think he was being ultra conservative just to make sure we at least got field goals in those situations. And I think with the Eagles defense, the way the offense can operate, I think you have to be a little bit more aggressive in the red zone and just know that the defense can make stops, the offense can get back and score more points. So I think moving forward, this is going to be a good thing for Brian Johnson. It's going to force him to be more creative, game plan more towards Jalen Hurts carving people up and in the passing game, which he's very capable of doing and did this past Sunday against the Commanders. Obviously this was not a great game for the Eagles defense. Sam Howell, for whatever reason, turns into Steve Young every single time that the Eagles play the Commanders, and he was running around, making plays, getting outside the pocket. Eric Bieniemy must have the book on Sean Desai, the Eagles defensive coordinator at this point, because every single time it's just a lot of scoring, a lot of passing yards. Sam Howell's getting the ball out of his hand incredibly quickly, and people are just open in the zones in the middle of the field for the Eagles defense. And it's just an interesting thing. It's just, every team has an interesting matchup with every team in the NFL. That's part of the parity of the league. But going forward, I mean, the Eagles also fumbled the ball twice within the 5-yard line. And so, realistically, if weird, fluky things like that don't happen, the Eagles score very close to 50 points in this game, and the Commanders aren't even really in it. But like I said, Sam Howell, Eric Bieniemy, that Commanders offense just have the Eagles number for whatever reason, but luckily the Eagles offense was able to come through in this one. Obviously, A.J. Brown went crazy in this game, had one of the more incredible catches I've seen, obviously this season and maybe even ever really. He just had a nice one-handed snag, kind of goal line fade type looking play. And then obviously Julio Jones even got in on the action on Sunday for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts after the game was essentially saying along the lines of, who would have thought he would be throwing a touchdown to Julio Jones in his career. It's an odd situation. Julio Jones is an older guy. He's a vet. The Eagles just signed off the street, and he looks like a guy that's going to make an actual impact this season for the Eagles, which is really fun just in general to have a Julio Jones as a veteran presence on your team. That's enough about the Eagles. Obviously, I'm a fan, so I kind of went a little long there, but let's go on to the next game here. We have Seahawks versus Browns. This game was interesting. The Seahawks came out hot right off the rip, scored some touchdowns, and it looked like they were going to blow out the Browns, and the Browns just hung in there, man. The Browns defense kind of dug their heels in the ground and didn't let the Seahawks do a whole lot for the rest of the game, and then the Seahawks were able to come back in the game and win on the last drive there. The Browns, man, it's interesting, man. If this is a hypothetical because of things that happened, obviously today on the trade deadline, Josh Dobbs gets moved. I'll get to that a little bit later as well. But just think for a second, if Josh Dobbs never got traded from the Browns to the Cardinals earlier on in the season, how good the Browns record could be right now. If they didn't have to start PJ Walker, if they never had to start Dorian Thompson-Robinson that one game, I think that was against the Steelers a few weeks ago. What record do the Browns have right now with the loss of Deshaun Watson for however long he may be out? So the Browns may be regretting that situation or that decision, but the Browns are still super competitive every single game, even with a PJ Walker out there, because their defense is just so good. They just hang in every single game. But Seahawks get a big win here. They are sitting right atop the NFC West and the NFC playoff standings in general right now. So they're looking forward to potentially making a long run in the playoffs once it comes around to that. Next game, Ravens versus Cardinals. Ravens get the job done once again. Cardinals were competitive, feisty in this game, just like they have been all season. But the Ravens, man, they just pulled it out. Lamar Jackson's playing out of his mind right now. He is playing some of the best football he's ever played. And a lot of people are saying that they think the Ravens are the best team in all of football right now. A lot of power rankings have them first, even over the Eagles, who have a better record right now. They have the best record in all of football because of some of the losses on Sunday. So very interesting. Just to piggyback off the Cardinals in general, they do trade Josh Dobbs today to the Vikings because of the injury to Kirk Cousins. He tore his Achilles in the game on Sunday against the Packers, so that is something to look at going forward. A lot of fantasy managers were panicking, today and yesterday about what to do with, Jordan Addison, what to do with some of those like TJ Hawkins and some of those guys. Justin Jefferson moving forward, was he going to get essentially just, stay on IR all season just because they knew they weren't going to be competitive anymore? But they get Josh Dobbs, which he's obviously been a very competent quarterback all season for the Cardinals so far. So maybe they just keep rolling there in Minnesota since they are back on track to compete for the NFC North there. Let's go to the next game, Broncos versus Chiefs. In this one, this was a tale of basically we got wind that Patrick Mahomes was under the weather, kind of had the flu-like symptoms, stuff of that nature, and it was freezing cold in Denver yesterday, or I should say yesterday, on Sunday, and just Mahomes just didn't look right. The Broncos took advantage of it. They turned him over a few times in this game, and Russell Wilson did enough to get them the win here. This is the first win that the Broncos got against the Kansas City Chiefs since like 2015 when Peyton Manning was there. So interesting streak gets broken there. I think if Patrick Mahomes wins on the road against division opponents, that streak gets ended as well. I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in this. Obviously, when I'm sick, dude, I don't want to move. So could you imagine going out and trying to play a football game in cold weather as well while feeling flu-like symptoms? It would be terrible. Most men are babies when it comes to that. And so him even going out there is just I know it's football and they always play, when they're injured and stuff like that. But whenever you're not feeling the greatest, even though some people are dealing with knee injuries here and there, just when your body's achy like that, man, it is tough to get through. And so like I said, I'm not putting a whole lot of stock in this. Broncos get a much needed win. And then the Chiefs obviously fall here and relinquish, they're one of their best records in the football right now. So let's move on to the next one. Bengals versus 49ers. This was interesting. The 49ers now have a 3-game losing streak under their belt. Brock Purdy has looked more and more pedestrian as the season has gone on, as defenses kind of hone in on what's going on. They clearly missed the threat of Deebo Samuels. He is a big part of their offense, bigger than people probably anticipated, considering he wasn't he wasn't crazy involved all the time in 49ers defense, but you can tell what he does for that team. He spreads teams out because they don't know what's going to happen each game. Where does he get a handoff? Does he get a jet sweep? Does he get a shallow cross and take it for 80 yards for a touchdown? He's an explosive athlete, and they missed that portion of their offense. Brandon Ayuk's a good player, obviously. George Kittle's a good player. But they need a little bit more. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey's not 100% right now, so he's still playing well, but you don't see as much explosion from him right this second either. So, the Bengals in this one, man, Lou Anarumo had a great game plan going into this one to stop Brock Purdy in that offense, and they did a good job. And on the top of that, Joe Burrow, man, they had the bye week, and he looks healthy. Going forward, obviously, they had a rough start of the season, but going forward now, man, they're going to be a pain in the rear for everybody in the AFC, especially if they get going the way they have the last few years, where they've had rough starts before. The O-line has to have time to gel. For whatever reason, they start slow every year. But once that happens and Joe Burrow is able to move around now with, I guess, his calf strain has kind of healed itself at this point, he's going to get the ball to his playmakers now. T. Higgins is getting back involved. Jamar Chase never really stopped getting involved until he started, talking, and they were like, we're gonna grease this squeaky wheel, and they have the last few weeks, and it's been awesome for their offense. Joe Mixon looked pretty good in this game, so Bengals get a huge win. 49ers on a little bit of a skid here. We're gonna see if who they beat to kind of get off this schneid here. But yeah, like I said, Bengals, huge win for their confidence going forward in the AFC playoff picture if they want to get back in this. The Ravens are going to be tough going forward. Next game. Oh, and to piggyback off that as well, the 49ers, I guess after this game, they were like, our defense needs a few more pieces. They did trade for Chase Young today, actually, which is a huge piece to go grab. They already snagged Randy Gregory after the Broncos cut him, so they're adding pieces to the pass rush right now, and they're just trying to figure out ways to make their defense as good as it was last year, which is wild. It's apparently the difference between DeMeco Ryans being the defensive coordinator and Steve Wilkes being the defensive coordinator now. So they're just adding pieces, hoping like it's more of a Band-Aid type situation. But you're going to have Nick Bosa and then Chase Young on each side. I mean, that's the Ohio State boys right there. The Buckeyes on each side, the bookends. It's going to be the Buckeye bookends. Wow, say that 7 times fast. But anyways, yeah, their defensive line is going to be scary moving forward. It's not good for anybody in the NFC. But if Brock Purdy's still plays the way he's been playing and they don't get Deebo Samuel back in a timely fashion, they're going to have a hard time staying atop the NFC standings. Let's go on to Lions. Oh, yeah, Lions versus Raiders. This one, Lions get the job done here. Raiders are reeling. Devontae Adams, not a happy camper, wants out of there, obviously. Did not sign up for Jimmy G to overthrow him on multiple touchdowns. So he's not happy. The Lions look good. Second week in a row, Jahmyr Gibbs has looked incredible. Looks like, the 12th overall pick, whatever he was there. I think it was 12th. They should have been using him this exact way earlier on in the season. I know they fell in love with the David Montgomery, project where he's like the battering ram of the offense. But I think they are realizing that they probably need to use Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit more in between the 20s and then use David Montgomery, inside the 20-yard line, the red zone, goal line areas, short yardage situations. I can understand using David Montgomery just to pound the rock in there. But Jahmyr Gibbs is so explosive. His vision is great. He is crazy fast. And you saw all of that on display the last 2 weeks. If you have in fantasy, you are a happy camper. If you stuck with him through the injury and the David Montgomery up and downs and stuff like that, it may be a good time to sell him high right now if you can go get some pieces and if you need some pieces on your fantasy football team. But I don't know. A lot of people might just stick with him. I know David Montgomery's probably going to come back after the bye week this week. And I don't know if a lot of people are going to want to wait around for what the snap count is going to look like after the fact. But it is what it is. Jahmyr Gibbs looks good. Detroit's offense looks good. And Detroit actually just also at the trade deadline traded for Donovan Peoples-Jones. So they add another wide receiver weapon to that offense. Obviously Marvin Jones stepped away from the game. They kind of cut him or waived him, I should say. And Donovan Peoples-Jones is a guy that, he's huge. He's like 6'4" and is really fast. So a nice little addition to their offense. They probably needed something along those lines. Jameson Williams is kind of the guy that takes the top off the defense. Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously exclusively in the slot there. And then they have Jahmyr Gibbs. So more explosiveness for that offense is always, welcomed for a team that's already good on offense. Lions are right there at the top of the NFC with everybody else too. But yeah, let's go on to a few other trade deadline stuff that we didn't get to that wasn't part of the rundown here. The Bears traded for Montez Sweat for a second-round pick. That was an interesting one. I didn't realize the Commanders were going to be such sellers at the deadline. And by the way, the Chase Young was a third-round pick that the 49ers gave up as well. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think, was a 6th-rounder they gave up. Josh Dobbs, also a 6th-rounder, a 6-7 swap, essentially, for the Vikings and the Cardinals. So, and then, obviously, earlier on last week, the Eagles did trade for Kevin Byard from the Tennessee Titans for like a 5th and a 6th or something along those lines. Not a whole lot given up for him as well. So that happened way earlier in the trade deadline. Howie Roseman was working early this season at the trade deadline. Looks like, I don't know for sure. I haven't looked. Obviously, I've been doing this podcast now. Looks like he's probably not going to do anything else. A lot of speculation about Jalen Johnson from the Bears maybe moving as well at the end of this trade deadline. We'll see if that happens or not. But yeah, let's move on to the Thursday Night Football preview. It is going to be Titans at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers are favored by 3 points in this one. Right off the top of my head, gut feeling tells me Steelers are going to win this game and cover the points at 3. I don't have a ton of confidence because of the potential that Kenny Pickett doesn't play, but it looks like early reports are saying that he's going to work through it. He had a little bit of a rib injury, it looks like, from Sunday. The Will Levis situation obviously puts a lot of people on, that side of the coin there. The Titans will be kind of in this honeymoon stage where they're like, Will Levis is the guy. This is going to be awesome. Maybe that gives them some juice going into Thursday night. But I feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is just going to get after Will Levis, and this is going to be a game where I think he's probably going to get smacked in the face with the you're an NFL rookie type of deal where they're going to probably pick him off a few times. He's going to hold the ball a little bit too long in the pocket, get strip sacked maybe, get a lot of sacks. Just TJ Watt's going to be hounding him. Alex Highsmith, another good player, is going to be coming around that corner quick. And so I think the Steelers can probably get this done, even if they have maybe a Mitch Trubisky in there right now. I think Will Levis is going to have his welcome to the NFL moment a week later than he probably should have. So, and I still like Will Levis. Let's not get that twisted. But I think he's going to have a little bit rougher time against the Pittsburgh Steelers team in Pittsburgh. Night game. They're going to be playing Renegade. They're going to be going crazy. So I think Pittsburgh gets the win and covers the 3 points there. that's pretty much it for the recap of Week 8 and all of the things that I've already discussed in this podcast. And I appreciate everybody tuning in. Please follow me on, Twitter. Please follow me on, not Instagram. I kind of stopped doing Instagram. I wanted to focus more on my Twitter feed and my TikTok and YouTube Shorts and YouTube in general. So I've kind of stopped doing that. So follow on YouTube, on TikTok, things of that nature. I will be doing some short form content moving forward in this week and obviously for the rest of the season. So stay tuned for that. Put on the notification bell so you know when I drop stuff. And I will talk to you guys next week. Peace.